Hi, I'm Jeff Rubin. I'm president of the Pinole History Museum and Pinole Historical Society, and my guest today is Dyana So. She's a 2012 graduate of Pinole Valley High School, a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, and is currently studying for her master's degree in business history and global markets at Erasmus University in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. Welcome, Dyana.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, Jeff.
So, what's going on over in Rotterdam in terms of the lifestyle in the life of COVID?
Well, since mid-March, we've had lockdown and it's more of a partial quarantine. Um, Life has gone very quiet, but overall, I would say that things are relatively smooth, mostly because our health system isn't so stressed. There's a lot of people with that've been hit and have fallen ill, and in the Brabant area, which is basically just south of Rotterdam. But overall, the grocery stores remain pretty stacked. There's no bulk buying, and the Netherlands is really running the coordination. It's not so much a European effort. Um, and For me as a student, I got basically 2/3 of my education interrupted, and there's one remaining class and the rest of my thesis to write all remotely. I consider myself one of the more fortunate ones because of my other peers, they were still in the middle of their data processing, or they haven't even started. So as an international student, it's an easy adaptation so far.
And you will get your degree when?
I'll get it in December 2020 at the University of Glasgow. It's actually the first university I started off at in my 2-year program. The second university being University of Barcelona, and the third one being Erasmus University of Rotterdam.
So congratulations in advance.
Thank you. It's still a few more words and pages left to go until then, but I'm very excited.
So let's talk about your life in Pinole. You come from an immigrant family. So where is your family from? When did they come to the United States? And what was it like growing up in Pinole?
Sure. So I can trace my family history back so far as to my paternal and maternal grandparents, because I don't have any record of my family history before then, due to the war in China. And my family, I as well as was my little brother, we all were born in Hong Kong, and we moved. You asked me when I moved, right, to Pennell?
Yeah, I think you
Yeah.
said it was 2000.
Yeah, it's 2000. We
Yeah.
moved in 2000, but we first moved to California in 1999. This was shortly after my father got his green card and was settling in. He found work in Pinole and also a house there with the assistance of my grandfather, paying for the house as well for the mortgage. And that's how our life in Pinole started. Never moved.
And how has your time living in Pinole? Let's see, you lived there until 20.
Until 2012. I still live
Well,
there,
so yeah, right.
but
So when you come home, you have a place to stay.
right.
Right. So what was it like essentially growing up in Pinole, and what are some of your favorite memories?
To be honest, there's a lot. And as more time has passed, I think it's become clear to me how I feel about Pinole as a place. It really was a pleasant place to grow up. And when I think back on where I am today, I attribute some of it to the adults around me. There was just such a strong community in Pinole. And I have to say that because my immigrant parents were always working, they just weren't really there to support me emotionally. And I mean, they were supporting the family, but they weren't really there in terms of providing guidance. And I can remember that my father told me in first grade, he says, probably by third grade, I'm not really going to be able to help you much in math, and especially not in English, because I was learning English just as the same time my parents were picking up English, so at a certain point I was going to surpass them. But as early as first grade, as when I started Collins, I had at least one teacher who would always be looking out for me. And the first teacher that sponsored me to go on some kind of external thing to support some aspect of my talent, which was writing was the first thing, was sixth grade, Miss Willis. And that pattern has really continued all the way until I graduated Pinole Valley High, which I forgot to mention, and I forgot about it completely, but I don't know if you were aware, I won Student of the Year from the Pennell Chamber of Commerce that same year I graduated on 2012.
That I didn't know. I know you were involved with the Interact group.
I was involved with everything, Jeff.
Yeah.
I had too much coffee. I don't know where all that energy came
Uh,
from.
uh,
Yeah.
Believe me, it will subside as you get older.
Oh,
Trust me on that.
well, I've moved to wine at this point, so Scotland's also helped me discover whiskey, so.
Yeah. So you say you were involved with everything. What else other than Interact, and what else were you doing in high school?
Do you want me to you want me to really list everything?
Well, not every. Well, I remember there was an event that I participated in. You
Yes.
had there was a career day,
Oh yeah, so
and
career days
it was in the
Mhm.
gym, and I think you were the one who organized it.
I helped to organize it alongside Miss Layman's. And Miss Layman's is another one of those fantastic adults who really mentored me, to be honest, and looked after me. I did the career day because it was very much linked to the Ivy League Connections ethos at the time. I was manning that particular table to tell kids and parents about it. And Pinole Valley, this was still back in the old campus, but the college going culture was still something that needed to be addressed more thoroughly from a bottom up level. And the teachers were those who had time that really pushed for it. You were also involved, Jeff, in a history project I did with 3 other classmates when we
Yes,
were juniors
that was
about the
so
history
much.
of.
That was so much fun,
I still have the video and I
and
want to
so do
find it and
we.
share it with you.
Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
do you? Okay, good.
yeah.
Then I don't have to look for it.
Well, we gave it to the TV station. So,
Did you?
and just a couple of weeks ago, I was going through them because they need to be reformatted to put on our YouTube channel. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that was among the videos that we gave to the person who's gonna do that. But I
Oh,
remember
that's
that
great.
program. We had a special program
I
just for your
remember
presentation.
just in the new Kaiser building.
Yes, at Kaiser. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Well, if it does get reformatted, I would love to know about it and tell the 3 guys I did it with. I think they would love to hear that.
that'd be great. So
Yeah.
uh, you mentioned the Ivy League connection. So
Mm-hmm.
now you were an Ivy League connection student twice,
Yes.
right? After your sophomore year and after your junior year. 1 year at Cornell,
Mm-hmm.
1 year at Yale.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You remember.
yeah. So, what was that like? Uh, was this your first time away from home, all by yourself? And what kind of opportunities did the Ivy League connection provide you?
It was my first time out by myself. Oh, well, there was, of course, a chaperone and fellow students, but without my family, essentially, out of the state and very far away. It was an amazing trip. I think I remembered coming back wide-eyed to my mom after Cornell and just saying, the world is so big out there. It was just so different because it wasn't just being in a new place. I remembered as soon as we crossed over to the New York border, we were driving from another state. We were blasting Alicia Keys' song, Empire State of Mind. It was just like a full on feeling. And I remembered it was also the fact that we were in a prestigious place of learning, but we were surrounded by students from so many different parts of the country that I've never even met, in addition to around the world, right? Because that's what these schools do. They draw in people from around the world. And of course, there were all these side stories and fun memories of, the road trip experience and just enjoying campus life. But for me, it was like really cementing to me that I was capable of something greater and that I should try to aspire for it. And then it just, in many ways, I felt like that came before the UC system or Stanford or any of the California schools. And no offense to them because they're wonderful. It interrupted even that exploration phase. So my father, even, he later on would tell me he was rather upset I didn't really apply for any California schools. Um,
So that
I was, yeah.
so ILC really opened your eyes. I think that's one of the purposes of the program is to show students that uh, uh, there's life in higher education outside of
Yes.
California's borders. So
It
I,
also leveled up my expectations of what to expect in a classroom. Yeah, because it wasn't that I looked down on what Pennell offered, because I was taking all the advanced placement courses and I thought the history and English courses in particular were excellent at Pinole Valley High School. But it's nice to also step out to know what other systems are like, so you have references and you don't just believe what you have. Because now it's the internet age, it's different.
yeah.
You know, back then I wasn't always on the internet to cross and compare. You know, I was literally listening to what all my teachers taught me.
And so how did your now you were taking mostly honors classes, and I'm assuming you graduated with honors. And so how did your instruction at Pinole Valley High School prepare you for your studies at the University of Pennsylvania?
I would say some parts did prepare me really well and some didn't. And I'll start with the ones that didn't. And it was mostly the STEM courses, the science and the mathematic courses, only because, you know, when I got to Penn, the level that people start with that go into engineering or business or economics, it is a whole other level. And I then worked for Penn admissions afterwards and had the full on view of assessing different mathematics and English levels among students across the country. And it's not even just a Pinole thing, it's California. And this district in particular, that students don't have high performances. And so math and any subject, really, it's not just the teachers, it's also the engagement of the students. And so I don't think, well, personally, math and science were not always my favorite subjects either, so that didn't really help out. But to add on to that, that it wasn't as advanced, because we only offered up to AP calculus. And I'm not sure if that was still the case in Pinole Valley High now.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure either. Yeah.
But just to give you perspective, just a few miles down in San Jose, which was the area I looked over for Penn later, the kids there are, by 10th grade, they're taking AB calculus, which by 12th grade we were finally taking, if we made it that far. Then they also offered BC calculus, they offered statistics, advanced statistics, and they also offered game theory. Just a lot more was offered, and partially probably pushed by parents and the students' desires, because they all wanted to get to Ivy League schools, etc. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And so anything that the Pinole Valley High School did to prepare you for
Yes, sorry, I didn't
for
answer
the
that part.
rigors at University of Pennsylvania?
Definitely. And I really want to emphasize the English courses in particular. AP Language and AP Lit, both taught by Mr. Wade and Miss Brock, respectively. Mostly because I thought that they did a good job teaching me how to read and how to think. And I think for a liberal arts education, that is so crucial. I wasn't someone who was so pre-professional, so going into the humanities and delving into different works, Mr. Wade always made himself available and gave plenty of comments to my essays. That ends up being the crux of so much of what you do in the university, even up to now.
Yeah.
So I have a lot to thank for that. And also just managing a bunch of clubs from sophomore year up to senior year,
Yeah.
that was definitely helping me in Ivy Leagues, in an
I
Ivy League
think
environment.
I think we all have, you know, it's an interesting exercise when you can look back on your education, and especially I think it was either yesterday or the day before was Teacher Appreciation Day in the United States, and I often think back on the teachers who influenced me, because my areas of love are English, history, and writing, and political science. And I can think back, I remember I had a history teacher in high school. So we're talking 1964. That's
Wonderful.
a long time ago. I still remember him, Dr. Bernstein, 8 o'clock in the morning. He's the guy who got me interested in history. And then in college, I had this English teacher named Mr. Pelletier, and he was short and rotund. He was enormous. He had a huge belly. And he taught us Shakespeare. And he would walk around, he'd just pace the floor in the front and read to us. And he'd have the book up in his hand like that, and his elbow resting on his big belly, and he'd read Shakespeare to us, and it came alive. And that's what got me interested in the classics. And,
Mm,
we can all point back to these individual teachers that we've had uh,
yeah,
who had an influence in our
absolutely.
lives, and it's a great thing. And so I digress. I
No,
digress.
it's fine.
Yeah, you mentioned something
Teacher Appreciation Month.
yeah, that's really important. Teachers do not get the recognition they deserve, certainly not the pay, but I mean, and especially in these times where uh, they are adapting to online learning, um,
Yeah,
and they're
without the
just,
proper infrastructure and
yeah, and
resources.
and these are people who teaching their classes while they have their own kids at home. So kudos to them. So you are sheltering in place in an apartment in Rotterdam, and you're going to get your degree in December. So
Hmm.
what's next? What's next for you?
I am, well, unlike my undergraduate self, which was open to anything, and I still am. Um, I'm going to look at the things at the glass half full, despite the post-corona labor market and the recession that we're all hurling onto. Because if it was already bad in 2009 for my cousin, I'm sure it's going to be pretty grim also. Um, but I'm also not optimistic and foolish by having I guess, a positive approach, because one of the things I do learn from global markets is that these recessions happen, but at the same time, and so that also means that things bounce back, etc. If it's not going to happen now, it's going to happen sometime, right? And I don't wish for it to constantly happen. However, the world is also a lot bigger than the United States, and I think the sooner that we learn to be more global citizens, I already have a lot of advantages, to be very honest, to have had the chance to grow up in the United States, but also be so culturally connected to parts of Asia and now Europe with a very international classmates. It's not to say that the social capital and the network I've gained is the fallback, if you will, because I still have to find a job like everyone else to get to settle in. And to answer the question of what I'd hope to do, I was very restless after 2.5 years of working for Penn Admissions. It was a fine administrative role that got me back to California. So it checked a lot of boxes, especially for security, but it didn't satisfy my cravings to be creative. And there's two parts of me, that's business and art, and I want those two to blend. It's always been a dream, essentially. But part of being a first generation college student and not really having the network or the street savvy of how to really, I didn't understand what consulting was. I didn't really understand what engineering was when I first entered university, and I don't fault myself for being slow or behind, but a lot of it was learning by doing, learning by meeting people, asking questions. I learned about consulting through a Deloitte consultant on a plane ride back on my way home to California. And it was perfect. It wasn't a really, pre-professional kind of environment. It was organic. And that's kind of how I like to roll with my life. But unlike my undergraduate self, I do have some plans. My thesis is now about advertising agencies and creative agencies and understanding what makes a successful culture, because they can be quite toxic environments, so that they could be a model for success. I've interviewed a company that I really like that doesn't exist. It's also a history project, business history project. And I think I'm taking it slow and realizing that I do have a lot to give in terms of research and my intelligence and my creativity. And I'm just very excited to finally share that in terms of the labor and job search. I haven't fully delved into it yet. I would like to stay in Europe, frankly, because my interests are in creative industries, and I think Europe has more to offer there. but I'm also not completely rejecting coming back to the States if an opportunity comes. It's just that my visa allows me to currently do that as a student, to look in Europe for at least a year and a half. And if nothing comes up, I also might think about Hong Kong, because there's a part of my own roots that I'd like to explore a bit more. My Cantonese is only used with my parents, and I would not like to lose it more with more years to come, you know? So there's a lot of things I'd like to achieve, but down the line, long term, I'd like to start my own business. But before that, I need to kind of bulk up with more experiences.
So this interview will one day be viewed
I
by,
forgot.
a scary thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this interview one day will be viewed by future generations of Pinole residents who visit the Pinole History Museum.
Well, you know what I say to that?
What?
Dream big. Don't be afraid to say things to history and have it be documented.
Well, that is a great way to end this interview, and I wish you well.
Thank you.
And
You as well, Jeff.
and thank you for participating. And someday, I hope in your travels, you will come back to Pinole and be our guest at the Pinole History Museum.
Pinole will always be close to my heart. I mean, I'm one of the best things about the digital world is that you can still stay connected somehow or another. And even if my parents ever move away, and my brother, I don't know if he'll stay, um, there's just a big part of my heart that just has a Pinole shaped heart in it. So I will always try to find a way to give back.
That's great. Okay.